The year is 1944. The world is engulfed in the throes of the Second World War, a conflict that has reshaped nations and altered the course of history. The war has brought unprecedented destruction and loss, but amidst the chaos, there is a glimmer of hope. The end of the war is in sight, and with it, the possibility of a new beginning. World War II raged on, but the end was in sight. The Allied forces were making significant advances, and the Axis powers were beginning to falter. The world was weary of conflict, yearning for peace and stability. The devastation wrought by the war had left deep scars, but it also provided a unique opportunity to reshape the future. The Allied nations, determined to avoid the economic turmoil that followed the First World War, gathered in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. They understood that the mistakes of the past could not be repeated. The economic instability and competitive devaluations that had plagued the interwar period had to be addressed. A new international monetary system was essential to ensure lasting peace and prosperity. Their mission to create a new international monetary system. This system would be designed to foster economic stability and prevent the kind of financial chaos that had contributed to the Great Depression. The delegates knew that their work would lay the foundation for the post-war world, and they approached their task with a sense of urgency and purpose. This system aimed to prevent the competitive devaluations and economic instability that had plagued the interwar period. The delegates were acutely aware of the consequences of economic mismanagement. They had witnessed firsthand the suffering caused by the Great Depression and the subsequent rise of totalitarian regimes. They were determined to create a system that would promote economic cooperation and stability. The conference at Bretton Woods marked a pivotal moment in history. It was a gathering of some of the brightest minds of the time, all working towards a common goal. The decisions made at Bretton Woods would shape the global economy for decades to come. The stakes were high, and the delegates knew that their work would have far-reaching implications. Delegates from 44 countries convened at the Mount Washington Hotel. They came from diverse backgrounds and represented a wide range of interests, but they were united by a common purpose. They sought to establish a framework for international economic cooperation that would promote stability and growth. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of possibility and hope. They sought to establish a framework for international economic cooperation. This framework would include the creation of institutions that would oversee the global economy and ensure that countries adhered to agreed-upon rules and standards. The delegates knew that cooperation was essential to prevent future conflicts and promote prosperity. The devastation of the war had made it clear that a new approach was needed. The old ways of doing things had led to conflict and suffering. The delegates were determined to create a system that would promote peace and stability. They knew that the world could not afford to repeat the mistakes of the past. The old system of fixed exchange rates tied to gold had collapsed. It had proven to be inflexible and unable to adapt to changing economic conditions. The delegates knew that a new system was needed, one that would be more flexible and responsive to the needs of the global economy. It had contributed to the Great Depression and hindered global trade. The economic instability of the interwar period had created an environment in which protectionism and nationalism could flourish. The delegates were determined to create a system that would promote free trade and economic cooperation. The world was looking for stability, for a way to rebuild and prosper. The war had left many countries in ruins, and the task of reconstruction was daunting. The delegates knew that economic stability was essential to the rebuilding process. They were determined to create a system that would support the recovery and growth of war-torn nations. The Bretton Woods Agreement emerged as a beacon of hope. It represented a new beginning, a chance to build a better future. The agreement laid the foundation for a new era of international economic cooperation. It was a bold and ambitious plan, but the delegates were confident that it would succeed. It promised a more stable and prosperous future for war-torn nations. The agreement included provisions for the creation of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank, institutions that would play a crucial role in the post-war recovery. The delegates knew that these institutions would be essential to maintaining economic stability and promoting growth. The agreement laid the foundation for a new era of international economic cooperation. It established a system of fixed exchange rates, with the US dollar tied to gold and other currencies pegged to the dollar. This system provided the stability that the global economy needed to recover and grow. The Bretton Woods Conference was not merely about economics. It was about rebuilding a world shattered by conflict. The delegates understood that economic stability was essential to peace and prosperity. They were determined to create a system that would promote both. It was about rebuilding a world shattered by conflict. The war had left deep scars, but it had also created an opportunity for change. The delegates were determined to seize this opportunity and create a better future for all. It was about creating a system that would foster peace and prosperity. The delegates knew that economic stability was essential to preventing future conflicts. They were determined to create a system that would promote cooperation and mutual benefit. The delegates understood the gravity of their task. They knew that the decisions they made would have far-reaching implications. They approached their work with a sense of responsibility and determination. They were committed to creating a system that would promote peace and prosperity for future generations. They were determined to create a lasting legacy for future generations. The Bretton Woods Agreement was a bold and ambitious plan, but the delegates were confident that it would succeed. They knew that their work would shape the future of the global economy and promote peace and prosperity for years to come. The Bretton Woods Agreement, established in 1944, had several key goals that were crucial for the post-war world. First and foremost, it aimed to create a stable international monetary system. This was a time when the world was emerging from the chaos of World War II, and economic stability was paramount. This meant establishing fixed exchange rates to facilitate international trade and investment. Fixed exchange rates were seen as a way to provide predictability and stability, which were essential for rebuilding economies. The goal was to avoid the chaos of fluctuating currencies that had hampered economic growth in the past. Unstable currencies had led to economic uncertainty, making it difficult for countries to plan for the future. Second, the agreement sought to promote economic growth and development on a global scale. The devastation of the war had left many economies in ruins, and rebuilding was not just a priority but a necessity. The war had devastated economies worldwide, and rebuilding was paramount. Cities lay in ruins, industries were destroyed, and millions of people were left without jobs or homes. The delegates at Bretton Woods believed that a stable monetary system was essential for fostering economic recovery. They understood that without stability, efforts to rebuild would be undermined by financial uncertainty. By promoting trade and investment, they hoped to lift nations out of poverty and create a more prosperous world. Trade and investment were seen as engines of growth that could drive economic recovery and development. Third, the agreement aimed to prevent a recurrence of the economic nationalism that had contributed to the war. Economic nationalism, characterized by protectionist policies, had created tensions and conflicts between nations. During the interwar period, countries had engaged in protectionist policies, raising tariffs and devaluing their currencies to gain a competitive advantage. These actions had led to a downward spiral of retaliatory measures. These beggar-thy-neighbor policies had ultimately harmed everyone. Instead of fostering growth, they had led to economic stagnation and decline, exacerbating the global economic downturn. The Bretton Woods Agreement sought to create a system of international cooperation. The idea was to replace competition with collaboration, ensuring that countries worked together for mutual benefit. It aimed to discourage countries from pursuing policies that benefited themselves at the expense of others. By fostering a spirit of cooperation, the agreement sought to create a more stable and interconnected global economy. The delegates believed that by working together, nations could create a more stable and prosperous world for all. They envisioned a future where economic stability and growth were shared goals, leading to lasting peace and prosperity. Two towering figures dominated the Bretton Woods Conference: John Maynard Keynes and Harry Dexter White. Their ideas and debates would shape the future of the global economic system for decades to come. Keynes, the renowned British economist, was a proponent of government intervention in the economy. His theories, which became known as Keynesian economics, emphasized the role of government in smoothing out the boom and bust cycles of the market. He argued for a system that would allow countries to manage their exchange rates and control the flow of capital. Keynes believed that without such controls, economies could be destabilized by speculative financial flows and sudden shifts in investor sentiment. White, the chief international economist at the U.S. Treasury, favored a more market-oriented approach. He was a key architect of the U.S. economic policy during and after World War II, and his ideas were deeply influenced by the American emphasis on free markets and trade. He believed that fixed exchange rates and free trade were essential for economic growth. White argued that a stable exchange rate system would facilitate international trade and investment, which in turn would promote global economic stability and prosperity. Despite their differences, Keynes and White shared a common goal to create a more stable and prosperous world. They both recognized the need for international cooperation to prevent the kind of economic turmoil that had led to the Great Depression and World War II. Keynes envisioned a powerful international clearing union. This institution would act as a global central bank, regulating currency exchange and providing credit to countries facing balance of payments difficulties. He believed that such a union would help to stabilize the global economy by ensuring that countries could maintain stable exchange rates and avoid the kind of competitive devaluations that had contributed to the economic chaos of the 1930s. This institution would regulate currency exchange and provide credit to countries facing balance of payments difficulties. Keynes's vision was ambitious, aiming to create a system that would support global economic stability and growth. White, on the other hand, proposed a more modest stabilization fund. His plan was less ambitious than Keynes's, but it was also more in line with the political realities of the time. White's stabilization fund would provide short-term loans to countries struggling to maintain their exchange rates, helping them to avoid the kind of financial crises that had plagued the interwar period. This fund would provide short-term loans to countries struggling to maintain their exchange rates. White's approach was pragmatic, focusing on immediate solutions to the problems of exchange rate stability and international liquidity. The final agreement reflected a compromise between these two visions. It incorporated elements of both Keynes's and White's proposals, creating a system that aimed to balance the need for exchange rate stability with the flexibility to adjust to changing economic conditions. It established a system of fixed exchange rates, but with some flexibility for countries to adjust their currencies if needed. This compromise allowed for a degree of stability in international exchange rates, while also providing countries with the ability to respond to economic shocks and imbalances. It also created two new international institutions, the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, later known as the World Bank. These institutions were designed to support the new international economic order, providing financial assistance and policy advice to countries in need. The IMF would oversee the international monetary system, while the World Bank would focus on long-term economic development and reconstruction. Together, these institutions would play a crucial role in promoting global economic stability and growth in the post-war era. At the heart of the Bretton Woods system lay the gold dollar standard. Under this system, the United States pegged the value of the dollar to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. Other countries then pegged their currencies to the dollar, creating a system of fixed exchange rates. This arrangement provided stability in international markets, fostering confidence. The gold dollar standard had several advantages. First, it provided a stable basis for international trade and investment. With exchange rates fixed, businesses could engage in cross-border transactions without worrying about currency fluctuations. This stability encouraged trade and investment, contributing to economic growth worldwide. Second, the system helped to control inflation. By pegging their currencies to gold, countries were limited in their ability to print money. This constraint helped to prevent runaway inflation, which had plagued many countries in the past. However, the gold dollar standard also had its drawbacks. It relied heavily on the United States to maintain the stability of the system. As the issuer of the reserve currency, the United States had a special responsibility to manage its economy prudently. Any instability in the U.S. economy could ripple through the entire system, affecting global stability. Please subscribe and like to help our humanitarian project. Thank you.